Thank you all for joining us for this Facebook Live event, How to Create a Killer LinkedIn Profile. I'm Mac Pritchard, publisher of Mac's List, and I'm speaking to you from our offices here at Mac's List in downtown Portland. As you know, we've just launched our first online course. It's called How to Wow and Woo Employers, and it's the first in a series of online courses that we're doing at Mac's List and about job hunting and career management. It's been a big project for us and something we're very excited to share with you. Tomorrow, lesson 2 of this new course goes live. It's called If You're Not on LinkedIn, You Must Be Retired. You'll get an email from us as soon as the course is live. You should have access both to the introductory video and lesson 1. In the meantime, we've organized this event today just for you, the people who signed up to learn about our new courses. And here's our plan for the next hour. I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes about LinkedIn and the general principles of a good LinkedIn profile. Then I want to open it up to you all, and I'm going to answer your questions about LinkedIn. I'm also going to provide feedback on 4 LinkedIn profiles. We've had 4 volunteers step forward to brave souls who've asked for feedback about their profile. So we'll start with those, but if you'd like me to look at your own LinkedIn profile, just communicate with us via the comments section and share your link in the comment feed, and I'll review as many as I can in our hour together. I also want to hear from you, your comments and your questions. So leave your questions and comments in the comment feed. And again, a big thanks to the people who offered to share their LinkedIn profiles. It's tough to put yourself out there, especially in front of strangers. But our goal here is to help everybody get better at LinkedIn and to learn from each other. So I'm hoping also that you'll connect with each other as you see other people's names in Facebook in today's event, and you either connect on Facebook or even better on LinkedIn. And I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, because finding work is all about networking with others, and you'll be amazed at the contacts that you can make at events like this that are happening online or in person, but it's all about human connections. So before we go any further, I'd like people who have joined us to introduce themselves. So if you're out there watching, please take a moment and say hi and tell us something about yourself in the comment box. So, and I'm sitting here with the Mac's List team. You can't see them, but there's Ben Forstag, our managing director, Jenna Forstrom, our community manager, who co-hosts the Find Your Dream podcast with me, and Jessica Black, our administrative assistant. And so, Ben, Jenna, what are you seeing in terms of comments?
No one's commenting yet. Who's going to be the first brave soul today?
Who will be the first brave soul who would like to say, hey, I'm out there? Or perhaps would like, in addition to just throw out a question about LinkedIn. Okay.
No one's brave enough yet.
All right.
You can see you're out there, though.
All right. So how many people have we had join us, Ben?
Right now we've got 9 folks.
9 folks, okay. And again, we're recording this, and the video will live on in our Facebook page at Mac's List. So our experience has been that lots and lots of people come back later and watch the video. So let's talk about first why LinkedIn matters. And for me, when I think about LinkedIn, if there are so many advantages to you when you're looking for work or when you want to manage your career to use LinkedIn. The first one is you rank high in organic searches when you have a LinkedIn profile, when people search for you by name. And that's because LinkedIn is such a credible, authoritative network that typically your LinkedIn page, when somebody looks for you by name, is going to rank 1 or 2 or 3, certainly in the top 5 in an organic Google search. So that's a chance for you to put your best foot forward and tell your own story. And I think that's a second advantage of LinkedIn. It gives you the chance to describe your own professional accomplishments, your interests, and to let people see what you've done in your career. The other thing is, a third advantage of using LinkedIn is hiring managers are going to check you out when you're a candidate for a job. And so they will read what you say. And again and again, I hear from job seekers who say, I'd really like to say this to an interview panel or this to a hiring manager. If only I could get a meeting or a conversation. LinkedIn lets you do that, because when you're a candidate for a job or you've applied for a position, if the hiring manager want to learn more about you, they will check out your LinkedIn profile. Finally, LinkedIn is not just about talking about yourself or sharing your professional history. It's about networking. And often I hear from people who say, I'd like to work at this company or this organization, I just don't know anybody there. And one of the huge advantages of LinkedIn is if you know where you want to go, you can find people either that you've already connected with who work at those companies or inside those organizations, or you can find people who know people inside those organizations and companies and ask for an introduction. And LinkedIn makes it so easy to find those first or second connections that can be invaluable in networking your way into a company or an organization where you want to work. So those are the advantages. Let's talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that we see people make on LinkedIn. I think the number one error that I really caution people against is not having a photo on your LinkedIn page. It puts you at a disadvantage because it may signal to employers or hiring managers that you're just not invested in that page. You also want to have a good profile picture if you do have a photo. And typically that's a shoulders up headshot with a plain background. Avoid snapshots from your vacation or your college days, no matter how fun those pictures might have been to take. A second mistake you should avoid is having just a job title in the headline of your LinkedIn profile. Sometimes that can be, there are circumstances where that can be advantageous depending on your goal for your job search, but you really want to use that real estate to craft a title that captures people's attention. And you want to think about the key words that you want to be associated with when hiring managers are looking for people to fill jobs that you'd like to have. You also want to pay attention to your summary section. Many people skip this step entirely, or they write just a few sentences, and it's a lost opportunity if you leave this space blank or you don't put in thoughtful text about what you've accomplished. This isn't your resume, it's a statement of your professional interests and abilities, and you want it to be almost colloquial, and we'll talk later, I think, about the advantages of putting this text in the first person. Another mistake you want to avoid is having an incomplete work history. Sometimes people will just list their current job, and that's a lost opportunity, because a good, well-written LinkedIn profile allows you to document the depth of your experience and the breadth. Now, I hear from people who struggle, who are in their 50s with age discrimination, and I wonder if they should list every job. In those cases, and I'm 57 myself, I think it's a good practice just to go back about 15 or 20 years. You don't have to list every job you've had since high school if you are in mid-career or in senior career. But you should provide a thorough accounting of what you've done. And your summary statement allows you to do that, but also it's in your work history. You can list all your jobs going back 15 to 20 years. Two more mistakes that I often see in profiles. One is not including all your educational background, the universities and high school you've attended. And don't skip your high school. You may be surprised the connections you can make by doing that. Or if you had a semester abroad with a university in another country, it's appropriate and to your advantage to list that as well. And then your volunteer experience, particularly if it's in your professional field, can give you a big advantage, and you want to describe, not only list the organizations, but describe what you did. And don't be afraid to include volunteer experiences that reflect your personal interests, because you may find as you talk to hiring managers and other people in the course of your job search that will create common connections. And again, people like to hire people who they feel no connection with. And then finally, you want to pay attention to what is called social proof. And that's a fancy way of talking about the opportunity for getting not only endorsements for your skills, and you can list up to 50, but also asking for recommendations from former supervisors or coworkers for each of the jobs that you've had. And a good rule of thumb is to aim for at least one and ideally 2 recommendations under each job. And be thoughtful about the skills that you list, that you ask others to consider endorsing you for. You want to, again, while you can list up to 50, you want to pick the ones that reflect your interest and your accomplishments, and that because recruiters and hiring managers search for people using those words, and so you want to be found for the words that you're most associated with. So I'm going to pause there and ask my colleagues if we have any comments or questions.
Yeah, we've got a question from Jan, who asks, what about long-term stay-at-home moms?
Great question, Jan, and thanks for joining us. I'm guessing that you're wondering, well, how do I describe that experience if I've been at home for 10 or 15 years raising a family? And I think you want to be direct about that, and there are a couple of ways you can talk about it. One is you can mention it in your summary statement at the start that you're returning to the workforce after taking time out to raise a family or care for family members. And you can also, I've seen people also describe those experiences as a job and provide a job title and a time period and a brief description of what they've done and how caring for their family. So I think don't be shy about it, because employers have families too, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast because this question comes up a lot. If somebody's put off by that, you probably don't want to work there. So I would acknowledge it and be direct about it, and also take advantage of the other opportunities you have on LinkedIn in your LinkedIn profile to talk about what you offer to employers. Other questions, Ben?
We don't have any other questions. We have a comment from Christine who says, hello, I love the weekly Max List. Looking forward to this presentation.
Great. Well, thank you, Christine.
And Bethany, who tunes in and has commented, she loves the background behind you, Matt.
Okay. I'm guessing that's Bethany Lister, so thanks, Bethany, for joining us. I saw that you are RSVP'd, and you have. I know that you're in Portland as well, so you'll have to come over and we'll give you a tour of the office. We're not that far away. And
a quick follow-up from Jan, who says, I've been at home longer, but have had odd jobs along with being a mom.
Okay. Well, I thanks for the follow-up question, Jan, and I don't know what odd jobs you might have had, but if they are relevant to your experience, to your professional goal, your job search goal, think about including them as well.
Okay, one more quick question, then
Sure.
we'll jump into the looking at other folks' profiles.
Good.
This is from Laura. She says, the obvious downside of LinkedIn is that you can't customize your profile for a job in the way you can for a resume. Does that put people with more diverse backgrounds at a disadvantage when applying for a job directly via LinkedIn?
Well, I think there are a lot of ways you can customize your LinkedIn profile, and but I think the heart of your question is this: when you're applying for a job, you do want to tweak your resume to reflect how you're uniquely qualified for that position. And the advantage of doing that, you don't want to revise your resume whole scale, but you do want to pay attention to the requirements of a position and modify your resume to show how you meet those requirements. And obviously you can't do that with a LinkedIn profile because you may be applying for many different jobs over the course of a search. But I think what LinkedIn does is provide an excellent introduction to who you are and what you've done. And if you use most of its features, like recommendations under jobs, the endorsement for skills, you list your work history, your volunteer experience, you include a photo, you have a killer summary statement, someone is going to get a great snapshot of what you have to offer. And it's a starting point. It's not a job application, but it's a way to put your best foot forward, and in a way that will allow you so people will think, I want to engage with this person. I want to learn more about them, and I want to have a conversation either by phone or online. So it's a calling card.
We've got a couple more questions. Do you want to take those now, or should we defer till after we look at some profiles?
Why don't we go take, is it 3 more questions?
Looks like 2 more questions.
Okay.
Here.
Let's do the next 2, and then we'll go on to the profiles.
Great. You're the boss.
Okay.
Okay, this one comes from Erin. She says, can you share some tips for when you have had quite a varied background but want to focus on a particular field or career going forward?
It's a great question. And I think many of us have heard this estimate out there that we may have as many as not 6 to 7 different jobs, but 6 or 7 different careers in the course of our 40 plus years in the workplace. I think our challenge when we switch careers and then from one field to another, and when we're asked to explain why we've made the choices we've had, is to tell a story about why that made sense. And so I'm not sure what your career what motivates you in your career. In my case, what drives me is wanting to work for organizations or people who are making a difference in the community where I live and work, or on issues I care about, or ideally both. So I've worked for human rights organizations in DC, Washington, D.C., and Boston. I've worked for elected officials in Oregon. I've worked for nonprofits. Now I run 2 purpose-driven small businesses, and that's a pretty varied career, but each of those opportunities have given me the chance to work on things I care about. And when I tell people that, it makes sense to them, and it certainly made sense to me as I was making those switches. Question number 2, Ben.
Okay, this one comes from Randy. She says, when you gain an introduction via LinkedIn, what is the appropriate number of times to reach out to someone who doesn't respond the first time? And how long should you wait between contacting someone?
It's a great question, because nobody wants to be a pain in the neck, but you do want to be persistent. So I follow the rule of 3, and I've had good success with this. Whether I'm reaching out to someone via LinkedIn, or I've been introduced by email, or someone has suggested that I contact another person, say for an informational interview, I will write and I'll explain who sent me and what I'd like, and typically it's a 15 to 30 minute meeting to talk about my job search, and then when I'm doing one, and then I wait a week. If I don't hear, people are busy, I just follow up with a shorter note, and I include the original message, just saying, want to check in with you about this, look forward to hearing from you, and then I'll wait 2 to 3 weeks, and I'll make a 3rd attempt. And that 3rd attempt is very brief. It's just, I'll say, I don't want to be a pest, but I'd love to get together with you. I know that your schedule is a busy one. I'll wait to hear from you. My experience is most people respond after the 2nd attempt, and then I'll get a few people who respond after the 3rd. It's very rare that people, because they're so busy, don't respond after the 3rd one. But you can, if you don't hear back, you can let it go knowing that you've done your best. I do know people who, in that 3rd message, will take a more aggressive stand, and this is up to you. It's whether you feel comfortable with it or not. They'll include in the message subject line radio silence. I've used that myself, and almost always people write back. But you should choose subject lines and an approach that feels comfortable to you. Okay, let's go to the profile reviews. And Ben, can you remind me, can people see these reviews on the screen?
I'll be sharing the URL for each profile in the comment section.
Okay, so people can go to the comment section, they can copy and paste the profile URL, and they can watch along on their own computer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So again, big kudos to the 4 people who volunteered to share their profiles. I really appreciate your willingness to do this, and we'll go through these 4. And if there are other people who would like to volunteer, just send your LinkedIn URL in the comments section, and we'll respond. We'll get to as many as time allows. Our first volunteer is Cynthia Manuel, and she's at linkedin.com/Cynthia Manuel. There's a lot I like about this profile. First of all, Cynthia, congratulations on the 500 plus likes. It shows you're out there connecting with people and building your network. And I can only imagine how invaluable that is for you when you want to search for people in a particular field or occupation. With having a network like that allows you to do it. You've got a very thorough work history here, and there's a strong focus on accomplishments in each position, and that's so important because often people will use both their resume and their LinkedIn profile to list their responsibilities, and what employers and hiring managers are looking for are results because they have problems that they need to solve. And when you describe your accomplishments at your past positions, you demonstrate that you know how to get things done. You have a great volunteer section here, and it really speaks to your passion for service and all the work you do outside of your 9-to-5 jobs. And I like the fact that you list your certifications. Again, while you may want to limit your resume to 1 or at most 2 pages, with LinkedIn you can provide lots and lots of information, and it's to your advantage. Some things that you might want to think about are the summary section. It's a good description of your professional background. It's a little dry. It sounds a bit like a resume, and I encourage you to add more personality here. One way to do this is to write in the first person, and I know this goes against what we're taught with resumes, but again, your LinkedIn profile isn't a resume. It's a chance to share your personality and a little bit about yourself. So you really want to capture our readers' attention here so that in this section, so they'll want to dig in deeper. You do need a profile picture, and I encourage you to get just a simple headshot. You can work obviously with professional photographers. The fees can range from $75 to $100. Often at many professional conferences now, there will be vendors who will do headshots either at discounted prices or for free. Or just have a friend use an iPhone and take a shot against a neutral background and a simple headshot. Think too, Cynthia, about getting more recommendations from past coworkers and supervisors. You've got one here for your time at the Oregon Health Co-op, and it's a terrific one. But it's the only one you have, and it does take some time to collect these recommendations, but think for a moment about how many of us, and I think most of us shop now, when we go to places like we're thinking about a restaurant or a product, we check out the Amazon and the Yelp reviews, and employers are doing the same thing with these LinkedIn recommendations. Okay?
Do you want to take a question before we jump into the
Sure.
next profile? This one comes from Stephanie. She says, what about listing things like fun awards? Is it too goofy? Or should I not keep it because it's not particularly professional? Example, most likely to induce a group hug award. Do I post it? I don't want my professional work overlooked by being too silly, yet I want to convey some fun too.
That's a cool award.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on your job search goal. If you're looking to be a federal judge, probably not. But I think it depends. I think it's okay to share things like that reflect your personality. And again, kudos to you for getting it.
Let's ask one more question
Sure.
before you jump to the next profile. This one comes from Randy. She asks, would you recommend giving a person a, quote, way out when requesting a meeting? For example, if your schedule doesn't allow it, I completely understand.
You know, I think it's okay to ask, and when people, you know, my experience, Randy, has been that if I ask somebody for a recommendation about others to meet, they're going to suggest people who take those meetings. And if people say no, that's okay too. I would just be polite and direct and say, and acknowledge that their schedule is a busy one. And I think you can increase the chances of getting a meeting, say an informational interview, by being specific about what you want. You know, be clear about why you want to meet with them. Typically, it's to get insights into a particular field. Also, be specific about times that might be convenient for you, or that you know, say I'm available to meet on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays during these periods. However, let me know if that would be, if there are other times and dates that are more convenient for you. And be clear about who sent you. And I think if you do those three things, you increase the likelihood of people saying yes. Okay, let's move on to our next LinkedIn profile. And thank you, Jenny Dempsey Stein, for sharing your URL. And again, this should be in the comments section of the Facebook Live, and Ben's giving me the thumbs up, and Jenna's nodding, so that you should be able to see this. Please copy and paste it into another tab so you can follow along as well. So great use here, Jenny, of the LinkedIn project tool. If you aren't using this feature, I encourage you to consider doing it, because it lets you upload specific projects or presentations that you may have done in your career. And a lot of people don't take advantage of it, and it's a shame, because it really lets you create an online portfolio. And I think we've all heard this about writing and storytelling. It's, you want to show people, not tell them. And this feature allows you to show your work. And for employers who are interested in digging in, learning more about you, it's a great thing to have. You also do a terrific job here, Jenny, of using the publication section to list your academic papers. And I'm really impressed by the number of LinkedIn groups that you're involved in. And I imagine you're getting great content and interaction with the people in those groups, but it also shows to employers who scan your page that you're interested and involved in your field, and it gives them insights into your passions and interests. And your profile picture is a good one. It's not really traditional, but I think it works because it reveals your personality and your passion in a professional setting. A couple things to think about. Your title line, it's I'm always a little iffy about using the phrase "looking for a new opportunity." I advise against it. Instead, use this title to talk about what you're good about or passionate about, and you don't want to. I think that will serve you better. And you want to talk about what you do well, instead of what you want. And your summary section is a little dry. I think in terms of keywords, you've got all the right keywords given what I can see about your background and interests, but it's a pretty dense block of text. So I would encourage you to focus on just a handful of skills, and I'm a big fan of writing in the first person in the summary section. Good.
We've got some more questions here.
Okay.
This one comes from Christine. She says, where else can you get recommendations if previous company policies prevent getting recommendations from past colleagues?
It's a good question, and you can ask if the company doesn't has a policy against doing that. I'd suggest thinking about the people you served in that position, and go out and ask the customers that you served. And I'm guessing that you did a terrific job, and there are people who are willing to talk about that. So think about also people at partner organizations that maybe when you were at that company you teamed up with, and they were colleagues at other employers, but they can speak to the work that you did at that company. And while there's one company so I think those would both be great sources of recommendations.
And here's a quick follow-up question from Laura.
Okay.
Laura asked earlier about having a very general LinkedIn profile versus a very targeted resume.
Yeah, I see.
And Laura, I'm going to paraphrase her question here. So her question is it a liability to apply using that apply via LinkedIn button for a job? Because you are sending the employer a general LinkedIn profile as opposed to one that's very targeted around the specific needs of the employer and the job.
It's a good question. I think it depends on the circumstances of the job. Ideally, you will have wanted to identify a company where you'd like to work and started to network your way inside that organization. But many companies have formal hiring processes, so they want you to use their online application system, or in some cases, LinkedIn's application system. If that is a requirement, do it and follow whatever formal processes and rules are in place. But don't limit yourself just to that. Think about other ways you can communicate with people inside that organization, either through networking meetings or coffees or informal email and telephone conversations. I find when I talk to people, they have a clear idea of where they'd like to work, or they have a short list of sort of dream companies where they'd like to be. But I find that they often struggle with getting to know people inside those organizations other than looking at job boards for job postings at those employers. So I encourage people, if you do have a list of dream companies where you want to work, don't wait until you see an opening on a job board to act on that interest. Start building your network inside those companies now, and do it and you can find people either first or second degree connections through LinkedIn and begin arranging those conversations. Okay, well, let's move on to our third volunteer, Holly Greenwood. And thank you, Holly, for sharing your LinkedIn profile. I really like your summary section. It's very solid, and I think you've already heard this. I'm a big fan of the first person, and so kudos to you for writing in it. And it's also it taps into your passion and your abilities. I also like the fact that you've included your telephone number in the summary section. This makes it so much easier for people to find you. And I'm always, I encourage people to include an email address and a phone number in the contact section of their LinkedIn profile. Because if people find you and they want to reach you, they may use the in-mail function, but you're going to make it so much easier for them to contact you if you include your email address right there in the contact section or a phone number. Good use here of the honors and awards section, and the advantage of using this section is that you're able to demonstrate that you've been recognized for your accomplishments. In terms of areas to think about, in the experience section, you describe each job primarily in terms of responsibilities rather than accomplishments. So again, when you think about your past experience at different employers, whether it's on your resume or your LinkedIn page, start with your accomplishments. It's not a list of tasks or job roles. And again, if you do this, it's to your advantage because employers have problems that they need solved. That's why they hire people. And that's what they're thinking about when they're interviewing you or reviewing your LinkedIn profile. Can this person make my life easier? Do they have a demonstrated record of accomplishment? And if you write your LinkedIn profile as well as your resume to demonstrate that, you'll have a huge advantage in the application process. I'd also encourage you to consider getting more recommendations from in your work section, as well as endorsements for skills and experiences. Again, think about how we shop. We look at reviews on Amazon or when we're considering restaurants, we look at reviews on Yelp. Employers and hiring managers are doing the same thing when they look at LinkedIn profiles. Other questions?
You must be doing a really good job, Matt, because no one is asking questions right now. So let's go to the next profile.
Okay. Well, that would be Susan Parsons, and she is a performing artist, and her stage name, which she uses on Facebook, is Iris Moon. So, Susan, thanks for volunteering your profile. I love the customized URL here that you see at the top of the page, and I like the listing you provide of your top skills in the summary area. It's a really nice touch, and there's a great use of your personal business here. In terms of areas to think about in the experience section, it looks like you combined two positions with the business education compact into one header. And I'd encourage you to consider creating two distinct listings here, because that shows that you had two different roles in the company, and that's a good thing, because I'm sure you got that second role because of what you accomplished in the first one, and it probably was a promotion. You can also list the dates that you had those different roles. I mean, I do this myself on my own LinkedIn profile. I worked for the governor of Oregon. I had 3 different jobs in 3.5 years, but I break each of them out because after that first job, each one was a promotion, and while they were short-term assignments, about a year each, I wouldn't have gotten the second and the third opportunity if I hadn't done a great job with the first one. It looks like you pulled some bullet points from your resume to describe your past positions. It's okay, but LinkedIn doesn't allow bullets, and so your copy is pretty dense. I'd consider adding some extra line breaks between your bulleted points. And again, if I encourage you and everybody who's listening to rewrite your summary section in the first person. Okay, those are our 4 volunteers. Have we had any other brave volunteers step forward, Ben?
We have, and I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Okay.
Because you haven't pre-reviewed this profile.
Okay.
This one comes from Ian T. Davidson.
Okay.
And I'm going to put my computer in front of you, and you can give a live review.
Okay.
Ian's doing.
Well, terrific. Well, and I'm hoping that people are watching this as well. Please copy and paste Ian's URL into your own web browser. So I love the background picture, and Ian happens to be in Portland, Oregon, and the picture of the mountain in the background clearly signals that he's in the Pacific Northwest. It's a good headshot here, professional photograph. And I think it's very suitable for his occupation, a public policy analyst. And I'm just looking through his job, his experience section. So Ian works in government for the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and the photograph, I think, is a good reflection reflects the culture and the values of that organization. Now, the summary section, again, it's in the third person. I'd encourage you, Ian, to think about putting it in the first person to make it more personable. And I would also encourage you to think about talking about your accomplishments, not just the roles that you've had. And you've had some very impressive positions. I also would encourage you to think about recommendations. You've got a good one for your time as a Hatfield Resident Fellow at the Bonneville Power Administration. I think you would benefit from adding at least one Oswego. Again, you're showing people what you've done, not just talking about it. And you've done the same with your position at the Corvallis Transit System. It looks like you've got there's a news story there, and that shows you in a leadership role. I don't have time to click through and watch the story, but there are tremendous benefits when you can include show either newspaper stories or television stories in which you're a spokesperson and in the expert role. And just again, clicking down. I think there's a good explanation of what you did in your different jobs at, say, the Department of Energy and at Oregon State University's Policy Analysis Lab. I would encourage you, however, to talk about your accomplishments in these roles and elsewhere on your profile, not just about your roles and responsibility. I like the publications section, and it's a good certification area. You've listed several different certifications, and it's a good list of skills. And given the positions you've had, Ian, these seem like the right skills for those jobs. So I can tell you've put some thought into choosing the skills you want to be recognized for. And the honors and awards section, I think, is impressive as well. This is actually this is a very very complete LinkedIn profile. So a lot of good information here, and it paints a great picture of you. And I see that we've also have connected on LinkedIn, so we're first degree connections. So good. Any others, Ben? Thank you, Ian.
A little bit tougher when you're doing it live, isn't it? Yeah. So we don't have any other profiles right now. We've got time for one or two more if anyone wants to share one. We do have some comments from folks.
Okay.
Bethany says, I'm dreaming about developing badges for our organization's various participants and volunteers. Thoughts on badges for LinkedIn profiles?
I'm guessing, Bethany, that what you're describing is artwork that could be inserted into a LinkedIn profile as a recognition for a role or an honor that someone had received. And I think that third-party logos in LinkedIn profiles are always valuable. I think just for people who are looking at LinkedIn profiles right now, when you scroll through someone's work experience, if there isn't a logo for the company, the text, I think your eyes tend to glaze over. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, Bethany, if you're thinking about developing badges for people who have received an honor or an award for your organization, I think that would be very valuable to those individuals. And candidly, I think it would be good for your organization too, because I think you would find people would use them, and it would probably draw attention to your group as well.
We have a question that was emailed to me from
Okay.
Jack. He wonders, how often should I be going to LinkedIn? How much time every day does the average person spend looking through LinkedIn?
I'm not sure, Jack, how much time the average person spends on it. I visit it every day. I spend probably 10 or 15 minutes on LinkedIn. And on a this morning, for example, I sat down, I had a couple of cards from people I met at a networking event last night. And I had meaningful conversations with them, so I sent them a custom note and just saying it was nice to meet them and what I enjoyed about the conversation, and asked if we could stay connected via LinkedIn. So that took me a few minutes. I think when you sit down and you open LinkedIn for the first time in the morning or first time in the day, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner a box that gives you the opportunity to congratulate people on milestones, like anniversaries at work or a new job, or just to hit the like button. And on a typical day, I'll get 8 to 10, up to as many as 15 suggestions. And I usually hit the like button because I want to congratulate people, and that just takes a few minutes to go through up to 15 of those. It's also always cool to see what people are accomplishing or what's new in their world, and sometimes I reach out with a personal note as well. And if I'm looking for a vendor or somebody with a particular skill, I might do a LinkedIn search, but that's a special thing. So, and finally, I may have invitations from other people who want to connect on LinkedIn, and I try to respond to those at least on a daily basis. Sometimes they stack up, but Doing those three things, sending out invites to people I may have met the previous day, hitting the like button for people who have had changes in milestones or new jobs, and then responding to invitations or messages, that generally takes 10 or 15 minutes. If you're doing a search, obviously, you're going to spend more time on LinkedIn. But I think for LinkedIn maintenance, that's a good thing to do.
Okay, we've got time for one more profile review. I'm
Okay,
going to
great.
direction here. Once more, unto the breach.
Okay.
This is Randy Kovac here, and I'm going to pass.
Okay.
Switch computers again.
Okay.
And give us your live review.
Okay. Well, thank you, Randy, for doing this. And let me just scroll through it. And I see we have a mutual connection through Kent Lewis, a great guy over at Anvil Media, the president, actually. So there's lots I like about this page, Randy. I like the fact that you have endorsements under most of your jobs, not under your current position. So I would encourage you to get one or two, at least one, and ideally two endorsements for your current occupation, as well as it looks like don't have endorsements for your time at Dex Media as a marketing manager and as the director of field marketing. And I like the fact that you broke out your different roles at Dex Media because it shows that you were moving into increasing, you were given additional responsibility at the company, and it also gives you a chance to talk about your accomplishments in each of those roles. I would encourage you to get endorsements for your director of field marketing time and your time as a marketing manager. In terms of your descriptions of your work, again, this is a good description of your responsibilities. Think more about your accomplishments. I do like the detail that you provide about the size of budgets during your time as marketing manager at Dex Media. I think those kinds of details are always helpful. They paint a picture in the reader's mind. You may want to also talk about the clients that you served, and because, especially if you were associated with well-known brands, that shows the kinds of customers that you worked with. And let's see what else. Good list of skills. I like your education section. Kudos to you on the honors and awards. And you have a good network of contacts. And thank you for following Mac's List as one of the groups.
A+.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to lightning round here. We've got time for a couple quick questions.
Okay.
And we've got three lined up here. The first one is from Iris. She says, what if the company you originally worked for is now another company name? Should you include a link to the current name and logo?
I think the answer is yes, Iris. And I think in your description of your accomplishments and what you did at that company, you can say formerly known as blank, and I'm not sure what the company is, but yes, I think if through a merger or acquisition a company has changed its name, but you worked for an original unit of that company, you want to make that connection.
Okay, next question comes from Stephanie. She says, I'm the general manager for 4 different dental businesses, all by the same owner. Do I list them separately? That would be the only way to have a badge show for each business. Otherwise, I have them all listed in one lump position.
I would list them as one position. I'm guessing that there may be some kind of entity or holding company that somehow links the 4 businesses. If they are distinct businesses or are owned separately, you may want to break them out. In my case, I own 2 small businesses, Mac's List and Pritchard Communications. I do list them separately. but if it's the same employer, the same operation, you probably just want to list them as one.
And the last question today, before we let you off the hook.
Sure.
This is a good one. I've saved it for last because I get it a lot. What's your take on the LinkedIn Plus/Premium service? Do you think it's worth the extra monthly fee for the extra services?
I have heard from job seekers that it's a good investment, and so I would encourage you first to tackle the basics and get comfortable with LinkedIn and fill out your profile and see what you can't do without the premium service, because I don't remember the subscription fees. I think it's $30 or $40 a month. So it's an investment. But I think before you do that, first fill out your profile, learn how to use the networking functions of LinkedIn, and how to search, and then I think you'll be ready for basically the advanced course. But learn the basics first. Okay, well, thanks so much. We're going to bring the show to a close because we promised to keep it to an hour. And just remember that the profile is just one part of your LinkedIn profile, the platform. It's really, at its heart, it's a networking tool. And I think it's important to have a good profile and have a photo and get those recommendations and endorsements for your skills. But what I get excited about with LinkedIn is it's a way of finding people who can help you in your job search. And most people don't use that search function. So think about that and how you can make the most of it. We actually cover that in lesson 2 of our course, How to Woo and Wow Employers Online. And that goes live tomorrow. You'll get an email about this as soon as it does go live. And so stay tuned and keep an eye on your email box. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us today, and a special thank you to the people who shared their profiles. I really appreciate that. And I hope you found what we talked about useful in crafting your own LinkedIn profile. I also want to remind you before we go that our next online course is called Hack the Hidden Job Market. It goes live on November 1st, and that's about a week away. And in that course, we'll talk about how you can find and get the up to 80% of all jobs that never get advertised on a job board or in a newspaper. And as part of that course, I'll be hosting monthly chats just like this with the people who sign up. So every month we'll tackle a different subject, and I'll let you know as soon as Hack the Hidden Job Market launches. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more, go to maxlist.org/course. Thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.